when I became an entrepreneur, you know, like, I'm sorry, I faked it till I made it. I really did. So,
well, let's get into that because
Yeah.
I think that that's an underrated, even though I feel like it's talked about, no different than like in How to Win Friends and Influence People,
Yeah.
you know, that says like, say someone's name 3 times. And you're like, everybody's heard that. Everybody knows that. It's still very true.
Yeah.
Right. And I think in general, I'm like the way that you move through a passion that's like, oh, I really love to perform. Then it like actually leads you to fill that into your life and find places where it makes sense. And it might not end up being vocationally, right?
Correct.
And because to me,
well, I didn't want to be a poor actress. And
Listen-
it was very hard being brown and being an actress in those days. So I wasn't up for that.
and you were, I bet, thinking like, if I'm going to make a run, it wouldn't be stage because that's a difficult place to make a living, period.
Totally.
And then if it's already a small funnel, then it's like, okay, where do I go? Film? And then that even feels closed off. Like,
No. I mean, the only person then was Sarita Chowdhury, who did Mississippi Masala. She was kind of like the breakout, and everyone was like, holy shit. There was no one for me even to look up to. Like, there was just no path for it. And I made this decision very early on that I was either going to be a poor actress or a rich businesswoman, and I chose the businesswoman.
I love that those were the only 2 options on the
felt
table
like it
for
at
you.
the time.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because there's so many people listening who are like, in my mind, they're taking mental notes, because I think that it would take just a quick Google for people to understand that you work in very real business, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's why I'm not overstating it in this place. You exude qualified and as though you can carry what you're asked to carry. But when you make that decision from a place of like, I can either go down this creative route that's passion and love, or I can go down this thing, but I'm standing between the two. I'm not either yet. And you make the decision, I'm going to be a rich businesswoman. Then what was that first step like? What was the first mentality you had to put on for yourself, or the first belief that you had to change to be able to change the momentum of your life to start working in the direction that you were actually wanting to walk?
It's interesting because when I was at university, I couldn't afford to be at university without working. So I worked in real estate, and I was basically selling apartments. But I worked into real estate. I moved into real estate just to work in an office and just kind of man the phones. I was a receptionist. But I had this great manager, Justin. And, you know, I worked on the weekends predominantly and in the evenings. It was really short staffed in our office. So I would be there to kind of man the phones and be a receptionist, but often he would just disappear and I would then end up just selling. You know, I'd be like, oh my God, this great, lovely 2-bedroom garden apartment. Like, oh my God, this fits your needs so well. And what was so brilliant about what that taught me was we used to have this intake form that I used to have to fill in. And he would say to me, your job is to fill in the intake form and then give the intake form to a sales associate, and then they would assess that and then match properties, right? So what ended up happening was, because we were short-staffed, I learned how to ask a lot of questions. So if you came in, I'd be like, okay, so what kind of apartment are you looking for? What's this? What's that? You know, how many bedrooms, kitchen, airy, you know, like light, ground floor, whatever. Like I would ask you like 100 questions. And one of the things that I thought was really important was to make the questions interesting and funny so that people didn't get bored, right?
Yeah.
Asking all these questions. So I would say, okay, so do you want an open plan kitchen or do you want a closed kitchen? Like, is light really important to you? Because, you know, I like my light.
Right.
Yeah. I would always just be kind of like funny and roll with it because I was doing this every day. I'd get so into it with the person who was talking to me, and they were engaged and I was engaged. So then I would just be like, hey, I think I might have the apartment for you. Like, just because I would look at all of the apartment descriptions, and I kind of was just good at my job. Like, I would just go and look at descriptions.
Well, it sounds like you made an algorithm in your brain.
Right. Wow. It's never been described like that, but that's exactly what happened. So then he would be like, one day he was in the back and he heard me. And he came out when the client had gone and he said, you are really good at this. And I was like, oh, I just don't want it to be boring, because if it's boring for them, it's boring for me. And I like, you know, whatever. And he goes, but you even matched the right apartments.
Wow.
And he goes, do you want to show them the apartments? And I was like, what, you mean I get to get out of the office? Like, and he was like, yeah. He goes, go for it. And I started selling apartments. And what I realized about the sales process is just asking a lot of questions and really understanding somebody's need. And then when I left university, they actually offered me a full-time job, but I thought I was too good for that. Very honestly, I did. I was like, I've been doing this with no degree. Why am I going to do this with a degree?
Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
And there was a graduate program at Publishers, and I then ended up moving into advertising sales.
Okay.
And and I was really good at it. But again, it was just going back to the original question you asked me. I was being this other personality who I wasn't. And when I was picking up, I started in basically telesales. That's where you start. You just pound the phones.
Yeah.
And I'd be whoever I wanted to be on the phone. And the thing, because I dealt with race for so long, one thing I loved was nobody knew on the phone that I was basically colored. That was the word that we used growing up to describe me.
Wow.
Like nobody knew what color I was. So I felt so liberated.
Yeah, and the freedom in that, did it allow you, it feels like, and I don't mean to project this, but it seems as if it almost gave you an opportunity to create
100%.
actually who you wanted to
Who I
be.
wanted to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives me goosebumps, but absolutely. It was like, I think that was the best thing ever for me, that I was on the phones probably for a year. It's interesting because most graduates would be on the phone for 2 years, but I was really good at it. I was
just
really
sped
good
right
at sales.
through.
Yeah, they were like, we got to get you out there.
Yeah.
I was like, no, but I really like the phone. Like, don't get me out there to meet people. And at first it was really hard to meet people. But I keep going back to your original question because I think it's really important and I love it. But one of the things that when I became an entrepreneur the first time and I raised money, suddenly I was catapulted into the music industry with really big ego individuals and really big cats. And I remember I wanted to be like this, and because I was a new entrepreneur, I'd raised $5 million, and I was just like, I was scared. But the beauty of being an entrepreneur is no one knows who you're going to be tomorrow.
That's true.
You don't know who you're going to be tomorrow. Did anybody know when Mark Zuckerberg came in his hoodie who he was going to be tomorrow? And that is the beauty of being an entrepreneur. Like no one knows whether you've got the next Airbnb or you've got the next, class pass or you've got the next whatever. Like people don't know.
True.
So I had a power in that. Like I had a power in that. I did fake it. I did fake it, my confidence. So whenever I'd meet someone, I would really sit like this and I'd kind of have an attitude. And I was just like, and I noticed in the music business, you kind of really had to have
You
that.
do,
for people
I know.
to kind
It's
of,
it's an
I mean,
unfortunate
'cause you're in
real
the
thing.
business. But I just had this kind of attitude and it really worked. So that's when I say I faked it. But again, I was faking it. I was acting. I knew my body language mattered. I knew the way I projected mattered.
Wow.
And now it's so natural for me. Now this is not an act. Like when
Right,
put the arm
yeah,
down.
yeah.
But it's not an act. I have innate confidence, and so much of my spirituality and my faith in God has really driven that confidence.